session, which is going to look at hot issues in higher education in ASEAN. And the discussions will focus on equitable and sustainable partnerships and their role in meeting domestic development agendas and access to higher education. In many of the ASEAN countries, access to higher education is embedded in the country's constitutions, and as such, a child has a right to higher education. The United Nations believes that one of the most powerful vehicles to sustainable development is higher education. And what this panel is going to do this morning is to explore how international collaborations can support these agendas. We have a distinguished panel of speakers with ASEAN's 5 largest countries. We have eminent presenters from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. And what they will do is start by sharing with us what is it that keeps them awake at night, and how can collaborations support their worries or resolve their worries. We will then go straight into questions from the audience. And I've got a confession to make that before this session, I did try to collate a good number of questions, and the interest has been paramount indeed. Many of the questions have arisen via social media from many representatives truly interested in transnational education, but not having the opportunity to be here with us this morning. So I will ask questions on their behalf. And without further ado, I will start with introductions of our distinguished panel. We have Mr. Purvanto Subroto, who is Deputy Director of Higher Education Cooperation at the Directorate for Higher Education Institutional Enhancement at the Ministry of Research, Technology and Higher Education in Indonesia. He was promoted to Deputy Director of Institutional Development in 2011, and his expertise is mainly in establishing and facilitating university-to-university collaboration and system-to-system cooperations. To further enable international cooperation and development in Indonesia, Mr. Subroto successfully established an Indonesian Vice Rector Forum for Collaboration Affairs and International Office Forum. He was also behind the setup of many joint working groups between Indonesia and other countries such as the UK, Japan, France, Taiwan, and Australia, and many others. We are honored to have Dr. Azizi Ismail, Deputy Director General of Higher Education for Public University at the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. Dr. Azizi is a professor in Accounting Information Systems. He's a UK alumnus, I have to highlight that. His background is in Accounting Information Systems, and he's a graduate from Loughborough University. Prior to his current role, he was Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at University Utara, Malaysia. I'm delighted to see Ms. Marianne Joy Vittel, who I've had the pleasure to work over the past months on a collaborative program between the UK and the Philippines in international education partnerships. She's the designated director of the project management unit that handles K-12 transition program, which is a major program that started in 2016 and is expected to finish in 2021. And it affects all of the HEIs in the country and their personnel. She oversees international relations and partnership building. She manages the overall operations of the unit, which employs 100 personnel in the center office and 84 in the regional offices. We're really honored to have Professor Emeritus Dr. Sutiporn Chitripapha. He's advisor, Deputy Minister of Education, Chairman of the National Research Council of Taiwan Executive Board at the Office of the Higher Education Commission and National Research Council in Thailand. He was appointed in his current role in 2016, and he has served as Secretary General of the Research Council of Taiwan and reported directly to the Prime Minister between 2010 and 2016. He's the first Secretary General who's laid the foundation of the Taiwan Research Organizations Network, comprising of 7 large research and development management organizations in Taiwan, and involved in the integration of research and reform in the country's research systems. And Vietnam, we have Associate Professor Lee An Vinh, who is Vice Director General of Vietnam Institute of Educational Sciences. He has his Bachelor of Sciences in Maths with honors at Computer Science from the University of New South Wales, and in 2010 he acquired his PhD in Mathematics from Harvard University. And with that, we shall go straight into the panel's presentations. And if we can start with Mr. Subrata. I have to say, each presenter has between 3 and 4 minutes to present on the most pressing, hot aspects in their higher education at home. And after that, we go straight into audience questions.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for giving me the first opportunity to share the information related to the sustainable and equitable partnership opportunity case of Indonesia. Before I start the concept of sustainability partnership in Indonesia, it is good for me to share about information about Indonesian higher education in brief. First, we have so many types of higher education institutions. There are several types, as you see on the slide, that we have many types of higher education. Why I should say this one? Because the type of higher education will influence to the type of partnership that we are going to do. So that's why when Indonesian university want to develop that kind of partnership, we will see which university, which kind of institution they want going to do for the collaboration. And this type of institution offer many type of programs, some academic, vocational, even some on special or professional. And related to the number of higher education institutions in Indonesia, we have so many higher education. We have around more than 4,000 higher education institutions, and some directly under the Ministry of Research, Technology and Higher Education, some under the other ministry. And related to the Ministry of Higher Education, we have around 121 public institutions and then more than 3,000 private higher education institutions. Although we have so many higher education, but concerning about the gross enrollment rate on higher education, Indonesia is still quite low. We are on 32% of Indonesian people have access to higher education institutions. So that's why this kind of situation also impact to the strategy and policy on higher education. Currently, we also trying to open opportunity for the branch, campus, or international university to open in Indonesia, because through this kind of way, we also can give more opportunity for our people to have a good quality of education and increasing number of high gross enrollment rate for Indonesian people. And you see on the distribution of higher education in Indonesia, it still have unbalanced distribution. Most of the higher education institutions in Indonesia still on at Java and Sumatra Islands. And right now, under the Mr. Jokowi government, that higher education has been split from Ministry of Education to become merged with the Ministry of Research Technology to become Ministry of Research Technology and Higher Education. And that's why under this new ministry, we have new vision and mission. We are now considering about want to connecting between what the university is doing right now with the innovation and also the advanced research. And this kind of situation also impact to the partnership. Now we encourage our university to, when they are developing the partnership, they should also thinking about advanced research and also about innovation. And this is some objective of our ministry, relating the some issue about improving the quality of higher learning and also student affairs, empowering national innovation capacity and others. You can see on the slide there is some program that we developed under the Ministry of Research and Higher Education. And this is on the research partnership. We also focusing on some issues, and it also impact to how they developing a partnership on research activities. And related to the mobility program, we have some program developing by university with their partners about the overseas scholarship, enhancing international publication, even some program like summer school and double degree program. And now the double degree and joint degree program become a trend. Previously when many universities talking about international education or giving opportunity for our people to study abroad or something like that, and the first time we encourage more developing joint and double degree program. This is some term that we use when our university or the foreign university want to develop joint and double degree program. There is some requirement and also the standard that they are going to have during developing joint and double degree program. Maybe the main issue is about the term that we use. We have two terms that we use: joint degree and double degree program. Joint means more focusing on one discipline, double is focusing on two disciplines. But we still have some interception among this program. And it's not impact to what the term that used by the foreign institution, but in our institution, we keep these two definitions, but we can discussing with the partner. And we keep when talking about the partnership on this program, we keep the quality. That's why for our institution, we ask them at least to have the accreditation B to start the program. And we also ask them to have some reciprocal approach. When these two institutions developing this program, there should be some reciprocal approach, either talking about the student mobility, faculty mobilities, or about some other exchange approach. And the other issue is also about diploma supplement also involved in this program. And now we also trying to, as I mentioned, we open the opportunity about the transnational education. We already have some government regulation related to this one. It's about the foreign institution established in Indonesia. We refer to the government regulation number 12 of 2012 about higher education at Article 90. There is some condition that if the foreign institution want to establish in Indonesia. And even now we going move to some specific condition, because we hope that this year we could have at least one. I already mentioned the concept about the transnational education because we haven't had the definite regulation about this one on the implementation. But we propose that we could have at least one this year. So that's why I put this as a concept of transnational education in Indonesia. First, having collaboration with Indonesian universities. This university will be treated as private university. And then having collaboration in academic, research, and innovation. And being permitted to have investment in such economic specific region. So we will give opportunity, not a massive one, but we can give them on specific area. We call KEK, or economic region, specific region. And in this region, we give open for them to operate the TNE. And the third is opposition university to be permitted must have good quality in terms of accreditation, nationally or internationally. World university ranking also become a concern. Outstanding study program needed by Indonesia. So that's why we will select or will require on such specific study program to be open in Indonesia. So it's not any study program, but we will give them a hint what kind of study program to be open in Indonesia. It should be also concerned about our interest. And under this era, we also give more opportunity to have mobility without movement, or more on the digitalization to online learning. We have some we call SPADA or ITRAN. This is like Indonesian Cyber Universities. We also developing some regulation to have this one. And this is also, we are also concerned about the fourth industrial revolution. And then this some concept talking about this one, and I think our ministry now also have intensive discussion, intensive meeting related to preparing our country to the industry 4.0. And the last, this is some policy we are going to develop related the industrial revolution era about curriculum orientation, blended learning online, establishing lifelong learning unit, and also providing grant and technical guidance. These some condition in Indonesia right now, and then we are open opportunity to have developing partnership, even about I mentioned about TNE in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Subroto. And if we can move to Professor Zizi.
Morning, everyone. I'm a lecturer, so I need to stand. My engine is still warming up, and I hope yours is running well, and hopefully I can finish it in 4 minutes. Where's the... Thank you. The future of higher education is about collaboration, it's about balance and impact. That's what we thought. Collaboration means between academic institutions, both local and abroad, and between academic institutions and industry. And in terms of the balance, is that we need to have a balance between practice and theory, relevance and rigor. Technology, if you are talking about 4.0 with humanity, and also probably between the nature of human as selfish versus selfless. And the impact in whatever that we do, I think in academic, we need to have an impact, whether it is long-term or short, on the way we live, behave, and work. And then, when we talk about collaboration, there's worldwide mobility, demand for internationalization and globalization in education, training, and research, in particular from the developing countries. We have seen a good economic progress of developing nations, and also the increased globalizations of economies and society. In Malaysia, this is the latest data. We have collaborated with 186 countries in the world. 90% plus of the number of countries in the world, in various forms, in research, in training, in education. And we have 10 foreign branch campuses. We have 5 from the UK, 3 from Australia, 1 from Ireland, 1 from China. And there's one partnership between our national bank or central bank with MIT, offering the MBA. Currently, we impose moratorium for new branch campus, but with exception. They must be a very good university, and it has to be located at our edu cities in Johor. And then definition of UNESCO, everyone knows this. TNE has become popular beginning with the internationalization in the 80s, 90s, and then people talk about globalization, and later on TNE. What are the motives? To build the local capacity and knowledge transfer, and some countries as a source of revenue, which is a good source of revenue, taking example of Malaysia. And in terms of the players, the awarding institutions are mainly dominated by the US, the UK, Australia. And we also have New Zealand, Canada, Germany, and France. And the host countries are, we have many in Singapore, a small country. We also have many in Malaysia, in Hong Kong, China, UAE, Qatar, India, and soon Indonesia is also working hard on it, I'm sure. And the flow of that is coming from the west to the east, but there's a new trend that the east also going out to the west. One example is PJ Global School of Management, which has a campus in Singapore, Dubai, and Sydney. And also now it's between east, and in particular the ASEAN. And there are several advantages, definitely, to develop the local skills, reduce the capital outflow and brain drain, increase competition, thus competencies in terms of the curriculum, research, innovation of local institutions, and also giving the multicultural perspective and cross-cultural experience. But there are critics as well that over-Westernization of ASEAN unit may give some challenges, I would say. And in terms of the modes, you know, there are various modes of TNEs. In Malaysia, I just had a check out a couple of days ago that we have 1,421 programs offered jointly with various institutions all over the world, from certification to doctoral programs. And the most popular ones now, I think the study abroad, you know, students exchange. We encourage people to come to Malaysia. We're also sending our students to abroad. And also double joint degree. We have many with Japanese universities from China as well, and also the UK. And articulation, whereby students study locally, get the credit transfers, and finish it in the institutions abroad. But then my final slide is about what's the future collaboration, taking into account the Industrial 4.0. We're going to discuss that later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Zizi. Thank you. And we'll now hear from Ms. Fidel from CHED, the Commission on Higher Education in the Philippines.
I'll keep mine very short and simple. Actually, I prepared 3 slides. Okay. Where is the PowerPoint? Oh, that's not mine. That's yours. I can't present your presentation. Okay. Sorry, I can't start because that first slide sets the tone of the whole discussion. But before that, reviewing the session guide, we were asked the question, what keeps us awake at night? So I'll answer that. I'll go straight to the point, very directly. Okay. Okay. It's could you? Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, given that question, let me go straight to the point. What keeps us awake at night is the question on how we can sustain the gains and deepen the impact that we have already started in 2016. So as Janet had mentioned, I'm a consultant of the Commission on Higher Education, specifically for this K-12 transition program, which was initiated in 2016. But let me take you back to the context at which I'm coming from when I say that we wanted to sustain gains and deepen the impact. So this K-12 transition program was a response to the legislation that was enacted in 2014, which changed the education landscape of the Philippines. So I'm talking about the K-12 reform, which essentially added 2 years in basic education and therefore kind of put into changed how the whole education system will be implemented, responding to the needs of the 21st century. And in this reform, of course, even though it's largely basic education that was affected, of course, the higher education should also follow in a way that we have to align ourselves with the new curriculum, with the new standards. And in view of the increasing globalization and the ASEAN integration, it was a perfect opportunity for the government to invest in its higher education sector to respond not just to that reform, but also to respond to the needs of the country as a whole for its economic development. So about the K-12 transition program, which, as I mentioned, is largely in the effect of the which responds to the impact brought by the changing education landscape, essentially was first and foremost a mitigation measure. When I say mitigation, for a particular time in 2016 to 2021, higher education institutions are expected to experience a reduction in enrollment as students go to senior high school instead of going straight to college. And that of course, has an effect on the sustainability of institutions. And to some extent, the security, income security of faculty and staff in these higher education institutions. Because of course, with most of the higher education institutions relying on enrollment fees, they could not sustain their operations and thus would likely cause the displacement or the deloading of its faculty and staff. So the government thought of a possible mitigation measure such that the effects would be somehow eased, and then instead of the usual dole-outs, we intended it to be more developmental in a sense, kind of like make it more strategic. So the following set of development packages were developed for the higher education institution and its faculty. One is the scholarships for graduate studies, which sought to upgrade the qualifications of higher education personnel. In 2015, around 50% of the faculty of Philippine higher education institutions have graduate degrees, and that's actually quite low compared to some of the neighbors in ASEAN. And through this scholarships program, we were able to send to date around 9,000 faculty for their master's and PhD. As for the faculty and staff development grants, in this case, we tend to answer also some of the questions posed by industry in a way that highlights the gap in skills and the need for more investments in training, especially as graduates appear to not have the desired competencies and skills when they enter the workforce. So in this way, we retool the faculty to practice what they teach, that is to be updated with the practical applications of their specializations, and also to engage in research so that they can have impact on their local communities and, of course, in answer to national development priorities as well. And there are also grants for institutions. The development grant, which is intended for developing institutions for them to keep up with the quality assurance standards of the country. And also on the flip side, grants for the more developed ones who can take on more innovative approaches, such as what I'm going to highlight in the next slide. And also, since we're the higher education sector, we also provide support for basic education in terms of developing training packages and also research for the senior high school implementation. So we have identified niche and priority program areas or specializations in which Philippines still lack. The left-hand side of the slide enumerates these priority areas that guide us in developing partnerships with other countries and other international institutions. These are areas in which, after we have mapped out specializations across the country and given the national and regional priorities, we wanted, of course, to build our capacities in delivering these programs that could help our graduates get into work and employment that could very well respond to the challenges of our country. And so through this, we were able to partner with British Council, in which we forged partnerships between Philippine and UK institutions. It's a partnership that aimed to provide capacity and funding support for 10 Philippine HEIs that will establish international connectivity and engagement through the joint development of T&E programs. So it's joint, dual, double degrees with partner UK institutions. And what we think, that was just actually the first step. This was unprecedented, and the 10 institutions identified were the first ones to set up such programs in the country. And so the question now is how to sustain this kind of partnership, and how do we replicate it across all institutions such that they would have the incentive to also undertake international partnerships, and how can government effectively provide interventions such that the other institutions would also be able to sustain this kind of partnership in the long run. And I guess coming from the Commission on Higher Education, which regulates some 2,300 institutions all over the country, the challenge is, of course, one, to make sure that the institutions should first comply with the basic standards, minimum standards, and of course, second, encourage more institutions to take on innovative approaches such as the one identified. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. And we'll hear from Emeritus Professor Chitmitrappa. 4 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Can I have my slide, please? I think that recently we have heard about the closing down of the US universities and merging of the Japanese universities. So it reminds me of some movies that called Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen, and I have some question that is higher education or will higher education be fallen? But I do believe that it will not. Sorry. What is the reason? Even now, the higher education is flying or sailing on the winds of change, that the rapid advancement of the knowledge and technology, and also the higher education was complained about the unsatisfied products from higher education that will not be matched with the works in the industry, and also the non-traditional learning process. But I think that collaboration and transnational education is the answer. And anyway, how to do it, how to do this transnational education be sustainable and also equitable for the opportunities. I think that the first thing we have to building the trust. The trust that the agreement should be clear and fair, and should be like a care and also share environment, not a gain or giving a pain, not for the process, but it is the reason that we have the responsibility or responsiveness that we can share all the knowledge to other nations as well. And if we have a mutual benefit rather than competition, this will also give us an opportunity for the sustainable. The other factors is about the targets that should be matched. What's the match? The targets is according to the institution target, and also the higher education ministry, or in our country's Commission of Higher Education targets about our products. The country's target, as you may have heard about our friends, Malaysia Industry 4.0, the same. Thailand also have the Thailand 4.0 as our target, and also have a higher education target as well. And some area, the niche area that we still lack of expertise and knowledge, and some disruptive technologies, and also some recognized skill that if the targets match, then our agreement or the collaboration will be sustained. The third one is about the similar or convertible educational system. In Thailand, there are also some programs about like a transnational or collaboration among the foreign universities with the Thai university. But in Thailand, the system may be different from other countries. Just only a few years ago that we have changed the semester to be like the Western one, not starting at the same time. And now we are moving towards what we call the modular system, so that it will enable all the foreign faculty members or the students to study abroad in some period of time during their studying. The credit system, the grading system, and also the flexible staff workload is also the system that we have to change or adapt for the collaboration or the transnational education. Quality is also the very important thing, that if we aim for the best, the performance or the collaboration need to be counted and also be accredited as well as it's a merit based. Then we can sustain all this situation. And the last one is about the higher education or Ministry of Education action for the initiatives or any enablers or supportive. When we talk about the collaboration or transnational education in the topic today, is also among the ASEAN. So that I think that building the opportunities among the ASEAN also need what we call the mindset change, that paradigm have already shifted from Western to Eastern or Asia. So the trust among the ASEAN that some issues or some discipline you see in ASEAN is also as good as the Western, and the important thing is affordable. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And we have Associate Professor Lian Vinh from Vietnam.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I will be the last one to do the warm-up before we go to the more interesting section, the Q&A. And I will give a very short presentation about how the internationalization is in the Vietnam higher education system. Okay, and I want to take the point from some of the presented views about what is the higher education institutions will be in the context of the fourth industrial revolutions. So I think the success of the higher education institution will not only about the enrollment rate of the student, not about the employabilities of the student, not only about the ranking of the university in the international rankings, right? And it's more about how we can prepare our students for the futures, about the sustainable development of the student, the abilities to scope with the trends, and the ability for the creative and innovations in the futures. And I think the internationalizations will be the key resolution for that. I mean, to train, to prepare the student for the changing world. That, I mean, is unexpected in the futures. So back to the topic of the internationalization in Vietnam higher education. I will show the first slide, a lot of information, but I will skip most of that. So to talk about the internationalization concepts in Vietnam, I mean, mostly we refer it to the global integration in the Vietnam policies. You can see we can divide it into two periods, before 86 and after 86. And actually, until 2006, it's the first time we put more, I mean, about the rationales on internationalization outside of the economic areas, in other areas, especially for education. You can see two comparisons between that rationales of the government with the higher education internationalization. We change from the simple, the more passive approach to more proactive engagement and strategic plan after 2006. The second slide, I just list down some of the government level documents that, I mean, put the internationalization in the strategies of higher education. The first one is the higher education reform agenda, the HERA 2005. I mean, the target of the HERA is quite ambitious And some people, I mean, consider it is too ambitious and somehow unrealistic. But anyhow, I mean, it's the first kind of the document to emphasize on the internationalization in Vietnam higher education. We focus on three priorities. The first one is about the preparation for the implementing of international agreement and commitments. And the second one is about the internationalization at home, including what we talk about today, the implementing the program in English, attraction of international students, learning from the advanced programs around the world, agreement on the degree, joint programs, faculty exchange, and increase the student study abroad programs. And the third point is about the cross-border higher education. And the government is committed to creating a condition and the mechanism for international investor. And we will see, I mean, how Vietnamese government implement that document. So, I mean, other policy and document follow that. I mean, two very important documents of the Vietnam is a strategy for education development in the period of 2011 and 2020s. And another one is I mean, commonly called the Resolution 29. I mean, about the comprehensive and fundamental reform of Vietnam education. I mean, we both go in line with the HERA, putting the focus and the priorities on internationalization in education in general and higher education in particular. And until 2000, we can see the foreign investment in the higher education sector in Vietnam. And I mean, the government has set up the regulation framework for the foreign investor through the Decree 73. I mean, you can find information. I mean, this is a very important for document at the government level if you want to learn more about the Vietnamese policy on internationalization. Okay, so in the Decree 73, we provide, I mean, regulation on the internationalization in the form of the foreign direct investment, the joint venture in Vietnamese entities, foreign university branch campus in Vietnam, and foreign representative office. And it is the pictures of what is going on, I mean, what is happening in Vietnam. So in the implementation of the HERA, we do have the government issues the plan for internationalization in higher education and TVET. I skipped the TVET part in the slide, but there will be some list of the targets putting in the two periods. The first one in 2014, 2016, 15, and the next one 2016 to 20. And you can see that, I mean, most of the targets is more about the outbound mobilities. For example, we want to send the university lecturer to study master or PhD degree in the, I mean, high-ranking university. We want to receive more international students from outside, more, I mean, the faculty exchange, and we try to establish some excellent university with the help from foreign government. It is a very ambitious projects that we hope to have a, I mean, international university at the top ranking. Okay, and so you can see the internationalization goals in Vietnam has set in the three levels, right? The student level, the institution level, and the government levels. And I will go a little bit more detail about that. The student mobilities, I mean, we increase the number of the outbound student, and the rate is increased by about 10% annually, and now we have more than 150,000 students. And at the institutional level, we have three programs, advanced programs. It is the programs offered by the local university, but we borrow the curriculums. We have the, I mean, invited faculty from the foreign university, and mostly that advanced programs we only pay. We work with the top 20 university in the world. There's the second one is I mean, it's the emerging situation in Vietnam's higher education. It's the joy and training programs. It will be what we talk, I mean, a lot about today, and the branch campus. I mean, in the branch campus is one of the successful story is about the IMIT from Australia. And the third one that I mentioned briefly about the establishment of the excellent university by the government. Okay, and here are some of the figures that you can take into into account for the discussion. It is the joint training programs. That figure is not complete because it's not comply the number of the national university. There are 2 national university and 3 regional university. It is the number from other university. But you can see most of the programs is at the level of the undergraduate and postgraduate, and the distribution of the study, the fields of study, mostly on the business, management, and the social science, humanities, and 70% is in IT and computer science. So it rises up to the question, I mean, whether the program offers meet the needs of the country development, or it is more for the short-term, I mean, demands. So whether the program is only offered because, I mean, it can attract more, I mean, enrollment, or it will go to the needs of the countries. So it rises to the question about the quality of the joint and training program, the effective of that programs. I mean, it will be the question also. And here is some information about the excellent university projects. And the government, I mean, officially announced that there will be no more, I mean, excellent university projects. So currently we have 4 excellent university projects. The collaboration between the Vietnamese government and the international partners. Basically, the effective of this project is questionable. The reason is, I mean, how can we recruit the full-time faculties? And also the same thing for that. I mean, both for the joining and trainings programs and the excellent university in Vietnam. The question is, if we think the ranking of the university is based on the student, whether this degree, this program is the first choice for the top student. Okay, so I will stop here with the information and leave for the Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. And if I can take the liberty and just start with a few questions that have been received from audiences far away from here, but I'm sure they'll be following this discussion very, very closely on social media. So I shall start with a question from Vicky Lewis, who is UK-based research in international education strategy. Are there any key learnings about building sustainable and equitable partnerships in those countries with maturity in the environment could pass on to those at earlier stage of transnational education development? And by that I mean you can just draw on examples from key learnings in any models of transnational education that you think there are lessons to share or best practice to share on something we can improve on. Don't feel you all have to respond to these questions, but are there any learnings in your experience that you would like to pass on to those interested in development of transnational education? Who would like to tackle this one? Okay, Ms. Vidal.
Yes, okay, it's on. Okay, so I think I would be on the side of a country that is in its early stage of T&E development. But from the key learnings based on our experience with British Council, what I can say are important factors that incentivized, or at least that brought such partnerships into fruition is, number one, of course, government support. I think that was very critical, considering that in developing such programs, of course, the institutions first have to have some sort of guidance in what programs they can try and build with partners. Second is facilitation. So with the government reaching out to international partners and really seeing this through, facilitating not just bringing them together, but actually through the whole process, guiding the institutions, providing learning sessions, which we actually experience in this partnership with British Council, in which we document the progress of each institution in the development of their own projects, and also identifying what other areas that these institutions need in order to sustain this sort of partnership. So as an example, We are also providing scholarships for the initial stages of the implementation of the TNE so that we are supporting demand coming from students, considering that this is a very new model in the Philippines. And another thing, other enabling policies, we're trying to look at possibly incentives to further establish academe industry linkage that would fit into the more longer term partnership, not just between the UK and the Philippine institution, but the two countries as well.
Thank you, Mayan. And Professor Jitmin Trapop indicated.
Yes,
wants
I
to
would like to add some more opinions based on my experience when working at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, when they have a joint degree program with the Warwick University, that it is not just only for the student, but it's also for the staff development. So Chulalongkorn University also have some chance for the staff development with that kind of transnational education, and leads to some cooperation in the research. So that I think that is also a key point. Transnational education is not just for the student, but also the faculty members' development as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to tackle this question?
Yeah, although the transnational education is quite new in Indonesia, but we also have some benchmarking and learning from my colleagues from other Asian countries. And the first one that we would like to have when we, the key learning that we can see from the existence of TNE is the first, the type of the program offered by this TNE should also in line with the country's interests. For example, in Indonesia, this opportunity will be open for on the issue of the business sector or about the science and technology. This is because in Indonesia we see that we need more university to offer this kind of field to Indonesian people. The second one, we also consider the quality. When we offering the TND in Indonesia, we would like to have the same quality what they are in the home country. Also, it's become our concern. That's why when we are going to have this one, we also concern about the accreditation and also in line with our national education accreditation. The second one also, when they found this one, we would like to have a strong partnership with the local institution because the existing one, the existing TND in the country is not as become a competitor, but it should be become a partner to developing this program with the local institutions. So they will harmonize among these institutions.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, probably a very quick one.
That's ACC.
TNE has been in Malaysia for the past 20 plus years, and Nottingham is the first, I think, to set up a branch campus in Malaysia. And things has changed, I think, over the last years, that the collaboration need to be more strategic. For example, Malaysia is a bit more selective in the selection process. For example, we have imposed moratorium, but recently we received one application to set up a branch campus in our Edu cities. And what's the uniqueness of that institution that it can offer us to help us build up our capacity? In Malaysia, we are still lacking probably in terms of the high tech, and that can add into the programs that we already have, locally and globally. And the other thing is, like, sometimes when we collaborate, we need to look at Malaysia is a small country. Our population is about 30 million. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, for example, we need to send our students and work closely with China because there's a big market there, 1.4 billion. And our close neighbor is Indonesia. Market is there, 260 million. And if you want to get in the innovation, then you need to go to the countries like, we work with MIT, for example, and we work with Germany, we work with Japan, etc. So it is more strategic type of collaboration. And with the technology-wise, IR 4.0, I think distance is not an issue anymore. We can communicate with less travel. And another thing that I would like to see more is I would love to see Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Thailand work together to address the local issues, regional issues, because we know better as well. And I think that is something that we are looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can just pick up on your very last point, Professor Azizi, because you did mention you want to see more ASEAN countries working together. And quite a few of the questions that we have received so far tackle this north-south tension in the relationship. Do you think that more ASEAN to ASEAN collaboration is likely to affect already existing collaborations from kind of north-south, global north, global south collaborations in ASEAN? And this is really drawing on quite a few questions that I have received so far, which also tackle the equity in the relationship. Does equality in the relationship is from the very offset of the relationship, or does it come later? Is there, and I'm drawing on a question I think from a member of the audience, Winnie Ellie, about the equitable partnerships. Do we have a winning partner in these partnerships? Are they always balanced and equal?
That's a tough
Are
question.
there any dangers in terms of the power shifting from north to south, or how do you see this panning out in the midterm?
I think to a certain extent, yes, that there's an effect on it. But I think, for example, taking Nottingham, for example, they are making money out of it and they plow back to the education locally, which is great, and we are very thankful to that. And also both institutions, for example, Nottingham and Malaysian institution are working closely. We build up the curriculum, we do research together, and that kind of have a mutual benefit. And in terms of ASEAN, of course, we need to work closely. There are many similar issues, and while we are working closely with our ASEAN partners, for example, tackling the tropical diseases, for example, we have ASEAN Economic Community, which is yet to have seen the significance of it. So we need to work together, our academicians, but at the same time we get our partners from the UK, the US, and France, Germany, etc., to involve in that project. And and in Malaysia, we are promoting what we call the matching grants. We try to get our partners from all over the world to work on the research project. Everyone is contributing, and even Indonesia, our and Philippines, Thailand, we're also putting in money. So that will financially will be less burden on the countries, and I think that is the kind of spirits that will be the future.
That's great, thank you. And shall we move on to questions from this audience here now? Have you got, you can address any of the speakers or just highlight that the question is for all of them. Yes, over there.
The theme for the whole session seems to be government has to intervene. So I think that goes against what we're trying to think about in terms of sustainability. So how should we move beyond that? I think the narrative has to change from government has to intervene and support and provide grants to or other forms. So that's I think that's one point to highlight for this model.
So am I right to think your question is very much the government being the key driver for internationalization and the shift of power away from government or devolving the power?
I think this is very specific to ASEAN.
Right.
Focus.
Oh, excellent question. Thank you very much. What does our eminent panel think about that? Would you be happy to surrender government power more to institutions?
Hello? Hello. Okay, so I will address the question from the audience and also give some comments on about the other question that we discussed already. So, I mean, when we talk about the government intervention or the government controls about the internationalization, I think in Asian context it's very important to make sure about the quality and the efficiency of the internationalization in higher education. I can mention some of the story that happened in Vietnam. I mean, if you can see from the number growing in the 2012, I mean, the number of the TNE's programs has been rise in the very rapidly speed, and there are some kind of the incidents happens when there are two international collaboration doesn't meet the requirement and the standard. And at that point, we're going back to who will be responsible for that. I mean, the government need to be supervised, need to have create a responsible regulator framework to make sure that all the collaboration just meets the need for the standard. And in my presentation, I mentioned about the Degree 73. In Vietnam, we are going to have the new one. We will have the open more, freedoms, more autonomies for the university to have the institutional level collaboration between the university and the university. But back again, because Asia country is the fast-moving areas, and in the degree-oriented country, we need to be more careful about, the quality of the program and how we can select the partners, as other presenters had mentioned already. And I also want to mention about, whether the Asian TNEs will affect for the long, established TNE players like in US, UK, or Australians. I think it will not affect much on that, because it will provide the Asian student more choice, more the diversity choice of that. You will know that, all the international collaboration will depends on who will be the provider, right? So I expect that for the Asian TNEs, it will be more about the local context, more about the exchange between the faculty, exchange with the student, more into the sandwich programs that the student can spend half of their time in one country, half of their time in another country. That is not that easy for, traditional TNEs program when we partner with the UK or partner with the US or Australia, university. So, and I think for the long established TNEs players, the figure so that, more and more demands on the online and distant TNEs, right? So I think it will not much effect when the Asian player, play into the games. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What about other countries? Is anybody else prepared to grant their institutions greater autonomy?
The right word, I think probably guided autonomy. There must be some guidance on it, some rules and regulation. We are open. In Malaysia, we are very open with that. We allow institutions to work with anyone that they like, but there's some restrictions as well, because at the end of the day, it is the students that, we look after the students, whether they get the right degree, whatever, So there must be a guided autonomy on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Subrata?
Yeah, in Indonesia, I think we see that the government still need to have intervention to the higher education development, because in Indonesia we have so many numbers of higher education institutions, around 4,000, more than 4,000, and then the quality is quite differs between the east and the eastern part or the western part of Indonesia. So that's why when Indonesia given some guidance how they developing the internationalization, like joint degree double program, something like that. And however, we still also give more autonomy for some Indonesian universities. For example, and for the big universities in Indonesia like ITB, UGM, others, they have become more autonomous. We call PTNBH, and then this kind of institution have more authority to run their program, international program.
Thank you. And Ms. Vidal?
Yes. Just to add to that, I would not really qualify government intervention as control, but more on kind of putting in a more facilitative role, especially in its early stages. So there's government intervention at the beginning, but with the hopes that the same partnerships can be replicated and even scaled up. And it's not just about giving support money. We're not talking about funding support, but also enabling policies that could allow other institutions to work on an existing framework and some incentives as well. So that's one thing. And I just like to go back to the question with regard to ASEAN cooperation in terms of T&E and how it will affect the traditional linkages in the past, as the UK, Australia, and US. I think there is opportunity in a way that if ASEAN countries collaborate and each can establish its own specialization and competitive advantages, you can really build economic advantages as a region. So for example, right now we have those regional value chains that is built on existing capacities of each countries. So it allows for, number one, greater economic integration across these countries. And if, let's say, another country outside ASEAN intends to partner with an ASEAN country, then it serves as a touch point. So you in partnering with one country, you're able to also indirectly partner with the other countries as well. So there are opportunities. It's not necessarily a zero-sum game in that respect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wonder, are there any other questions from this audience to any of our speakers? Or shall I carry on with my list?
Yeah. May I add some comment that compare with the T&E offered by Asian countries and the T&E offered by other like a traditional Western, how we can compete? I think that it cannot be compete easily. But if we start from the well-established corporation, like a Thai university with a UK or US university, and add some more Asian universities, like a multinational program, I think that would be a great start. Or else we will not recognize each other. I think so. Yeah. Right. And
Thank you.
Your question is, now Thailand as well, we try to do more deregulation rather than regulation, but only for the well-recognized institution, not for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It really strikes me that in all your discussions there is a preference from what Jane Knight defines as collaborative transnational education, where institutions from different countries come together to collaboratively deliver a program which is locally relevant, which kind of leads me to ask a question that was posed to me from Darren McDermott, based in Singapore. As ASEAN higher education integrates further, will a supranational transnational education strategy emerge on the back of that? I think just looking at what you've been saying so far, there are many similarities. But will we reach a stage where countries will come together and sign an agreement for supranational transnational education strategy? Some concluding thoughts on that?
Are you saying on the multi-countries?
Multi-country, yes.
Yeah, I think that's the future will be, I think, because right now we have a dual degree, a joint degree between two institutions, but probably I think we need to have, a joint degree that involve more than two institutions. That would be great. Expose students to the, to think more globally, but they still act locally. So, and with technology, I think that is not impossible. That can be done, and that's the future.
That's a positive end to a question. Any other thoughts? Is anybody else prepared to sign up their country towards a supranational transnational education strategy?
I think politically, the ASEAN committee have to talk about this, because at the first time we do the AEC, the economic, then the social. Now maybe like a ASEAN Higher Education Commission that we talk about this, and it's like a support from politically. It will be easier and maybe like a enable for the movement.
Very, very good. Any other who is prepared to support a supranational transnational education strategy? I'm very conscious these are non-committal answers.
Yes. No, I think, this is not a commitment of the Philippine government, but I think it can be a conversation that can be initiated maybe through such mechanisms, and perhaps also once we're done with the referencing of the qualifications framework, we would be able to have kind of a benchmark in which all countries can work together in terms of education and, of course, higher education. So once that is done, then we can, I guess, easily move forward. But I guess, I think such conferences always help if you bring in together many countries and then work on possible areas. And I think that's more of a long shot for now. But if we encourage right now different universities and linking them up with the other universities of other countries, then a natural partnership kind of takes form. So in the future, if you get stronger ties with, with such universities, then it would be easier to facilitate, I guess. That's just my personal take. Cannot commit.
Excellent, thank you. Any final thoughts, any concluding thoughts on the future of TNE in ASEAN?
Yeah, the same like other presenters. I mean, I also support for that idea. I mean, Asian university have a lot of things in common. I mean, we have the Asian network of the universities, and we also going to set up the Asian qualification frameworks. And I mean, the needs of something in common is very high when we want to have the mobility of the workers in the Asian countries. But I mean, anyway, when talk back about the TNEs, I think we need to look at the global picture more than the local picture. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
And I see also for the Asian country in general in the future that we see that we will have a strong connection, because as I mentioned that we have some program and some program to keep on the same quality among the Asian countries. For example, we have some program about talking about the Asean qualification framework, and we also have some program related to student mobility among the Asean countries. We some like AIMS, Asean International Mobility for Students, something like that. So I see that the Asean countries we will have a strong connection, and then also we will have a common solution to face this kind of revolutions.
Thank you very much. We shall definitely look out for any supranational approaches towards transnational education in ASEAN and other world's regions, hopefully in future going global conferences. I have allowed myself the indulgence to ask our speakers if there is one kind of TNE that they will support most in their country, what this model of TNE would be like, and this is the summary results we have received so far. I have to say that this grid doesn't indicate what is allowed in the country, but indicates what model of TNE would attract greatest support from the respective governments. So it's just a summary of what the best supported model of transnational education in ASEAN looks like. And just before we end is an announcement about a scheme that is run by the British Council. It's very freshly launched, which looks at UK East Asia Higher Education Partnership Program that looks to promote development in collaborations in higher education. And there are contact details for people that are responsible for these schemes. And with this announcement, I would like to end this session. Thank you so much for being engaged, for joining us so early in the day. And thanks to our panel. Thank you.